Are all MVPs created equal? Today we're going over the 7 levels of NFL MVP winners. Everyone talks about MVPs like they all live on the same shelf. They don't. Some trophies are airtight, others are coin flips, and a few, let's be honest, are questionable at best. First up, we have Level 1.
Level 1, controversial MVPs.
Let's define Level 1. These aren't bad seasons, obviously. They're seasons where the winner's value case is fragile when you line it up against either a monster from another position, a teammate, or the voting context. Starting with Mosely in 1982, who won MVP as a kicker during the strike-shortened season. He was clutch and accurate, and that mattered. But truth be told, it probably should have been a quarterback or defensive wrecking ball who won it. Dan Fouts piloted an elite passing attack in an era that still punished quarterbacks over the middle, with the league-leading 2,880 yards and 17 TDs. Lawrence Taylor was already storming off the edge, changing protections and shrinking playbooks as well. This is a classic case of voters rewarding steadiness in a messy season. Valuable? Sure. Most valuable in the league? The eye test and positional value says no. Now let's jump to 2024. Josh Allen wins, Lamar Jackson doesn't. Here's what's strange. The same pool of voters gave one player more first-team All-Pro support, then handed MVP to the other. That inconsistency is what makes it Level 1. The process, not just the outcome. Allen's load-bearing value was real, rushing threat, arm talent, high usage rate. Josh finished with over 3,700 passing yards and 40 total touchdowns. But when the All-Pro snapshot and the MVP snapshot didn't align, things got weird fast. Especially when Lamar had a historic 5,000-yard total season with 41 TDs and 4 interceptions. When your All-Pro ballot says best at the position and your MVP ballot says not that guy, things get a bit dicey. Another weird one is Brett Favre in 1997. He won co-MVP with Barry Sanders. But here's the thing. Barry Sanders ripped off one of the most absurd stretches of rushing dominance we've ever seen. In an MVP season we'll get to later. Favre was incredible, but if we're awarding value in that year, Barry should have stood alone. Co-anything usually signals a voting committee that couldn't agree on what value really meant. Another odd case is Fran Tarkenton in 1975. Respect the efficiency and the wins, he ran the show for a contender. But look at who lived in his shadow that year. Mel Blount locking up receivers in the toughest bump and run era, O.J. Simpson putting up yards when boxes were loaded, and Terry Metcalf as a do-it-all weapon. This is the classic quarterback gravity problem. We tend to reward the distributor on a top seed even though it doesn't seem like they should probably win it. And the same would go with John Elway in 1987. Great year, no doubt, but here's the Jerry Rice argument. Rice dominated with scoring bursts that flipped game scripts and a record-breaking 22 total touchdowns. And Joe Montana, the man throwing all those touchdowns, was also in the mix. The way Elway would improvise and his comeback gene won narrative points. The thing nobody's mentioning, however, is that Rice was essentially a multiplier on every down. Was Elway impactful and great? Yes, of course, but the positional tax on wide receivers tilted the outcome. Obviously, these are all MVP winners, so they didn't have bad seasons, just were a bit controversial. We're moving to Level 2 next, where there's less controversy and more legitimate coin flips between elite seasons that both check the boxes.
Level 2, coin flip.
Level 2 is where you can argue either side at the bar and not be wrong. The winner earned it, but the runner-up had a case as well. Starting with Ken Stabler in 1974, the ballot shows it was tight. He piloted an offense that led the league in scoring with him throwing 26 touchdowns, all while coming up big in the late moments. The thing is, you had multiple other runner-ups as well. Terry Metcalf was a yards from scrimmage machine with over 1,000 total scrimmage yards. Meanwhile, Mean Joe Green wrecked protections with 4 fumble recoveries and 9 sacks. The committee showed they cared about Stabler's late game capital and team record more. But the eye test says Green's disruption and Metcalf's versatility both fit most valuable depending on how you weigh non-QB impact, making it a true coin flip. Same would go with Terry Bradshaw in 1978. He ascended as a vertical thrower and delivered in high leverage downs for a top seed. But that wasn't it. He had a league-leading 28 touchdowns and was the QB for a top 5 scoring offense. However, Earl Campbell as a rookie was just different. He ran through loaded boxes in an era that begged you to pass less. Campbell wasn't just a workhorse. He set a tone that changed game plans, all leading to a season with 1,450 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. If you value explosive passing on a team with a historic defense, Bradshaw's your pick. If you grade the offense as a who the defense feared more and who carried the load snap to snap, Campbell's case is alive. Neither is wrong, it's just whether you prefer premium passing or defensive distortion. And speaking of premium passing, we have Peyton Manning, but we're talking about his 2008 season. He was surgical in that season, adjusted protections, and dissected 2 high structures with timing that only he had. But Drew Brees authored a volume campaign that bent the scoreboard every week, and James Harrison headlined a defense that won with pressure and intimidation. The voters showed they valued Peyton's pre-snap command and record more than the others. The counter is, Breeze's week-to-week yardage, totaling over 5,000 yards and 34 touchdowns as well, show that he should have had a case. However, they did go 8-8 and miss the playoffs. I personally think Harrison had a better chance at the award. He had 16 sacks, 101 tackles, and 1 Defensive Player of the Year, all while being the headliner for the best defense in the league. If you care about the degree of difficulty against disguise-heavy looks, then you got Peyton. If you prize relentless production or defensive game-wrecking ability, then you have Breeze or Harrison. But this one was tough. We also got to mention Brian Sipe in 1980. He may have been the last good Browns quarterback. He delivered clutch drives and maximized a system that allowed him to throw into tighter windows than today's spacing gives you, totaling over 4,100 yards and 30 touchdowns as well. Even with that, Lester Hayes posted a shutdown year that altered route trees before the snap. Add Earl Campbell's sustained dominance and you get a triangle of value. You can justify Sipe for execution and wins, or Hayes because of a coverage island that lets you blitz, roll coverage elsewhere, and flip the math on every third down. Or you can go with Earl Campbell for doing Earl Campbell-like things. Lastly, we have to bring up Lamar Jackson's 2023 season, arguably one of the weakest in the past 20 years. He was the most dynamic engine on the best team in the league, efficiency, explosives, and the dual threat gravity that makes linebackers freeze. However, the coin flip comes from Christian McCaffrey and Dak Prescott. McCaffrey was Offensive Player of the Year for a reason. Yards, touchdowns, records, and chain-moving consistency inside a system that still leaned on him to finish drives. Dak put up peak efficiency numbers on high volume, high difficulty diet of throws, commanding the line of scrimmage and shredding blitz looks. If your criteria is best player on the best team, then you got Lamar, of course. If it's most productive non-QB or best pure passer that season, then you got CMC or Dak. All 3 cases live in the same neighborhood. Which leads us to the critical question, what do you reward when 2 players change games in different ways? In level 2, it wasn't always clear cut to answer that question. But the next level, it's pretty obvious. These are some pretty solid MVP seasons in level 3.
Level 3, solid season.
They aren't Mount Rushmore years, but they're pretty good. We gotta start with one of the most underrated MVP winners ever in Steve McNair. He won the award in 2003. Co-MVP that year with Peyton Manning, but his case stands on its own. McNair played through pain, changed protections pre-snap, and hit shot plays outside structure when the call broke down. He threw for 3,215 yards and 24 touchdowns with a league-leading 100.4 passer rating. The eye test shows command, hard play action, deep comebacks on time, and QB run threats in short yardage. He didn't ride a stat wave, he set a tone. Defenses sat in conflict all game because his legs extended downs and his arm punished late rotation. The Titans' identity ran through him and the tail end of Eddie George's prime. We also have Thurman Thomas from 1991. He's what a force multiplier looks like. As a runner, receiver, and blitzer ID, he was like a juiced up version of Alvin Kamara. The K-gun tempo only works if your back reads fronts, wins the flats, and makes a linebacker wrong on every snap. Thomas gave them that and more. He turned easy throws into first downs, turned light boxes into chunk runs, and kept out of 3rd and long. He finished with 2,038 total scrimmage yards and 12 total TDs, all while helping the Bills get to their 2nd straight Super Bowl. He wasn't just piling on yards, he was unlocking no-huddle stress before defenses had the substitution tools they have now. We mentioned one underrated MVP earlier, we gotta get to another one here in Boomer Esiason in 1988. This is a clinic in scheme fit. Boomer weaponized misdirection and rhythm. He read half-field keys, sold fakes that held linebackers, and hit in-breakers with timing. He'd finished with over 3,500 passing yards and 28 total TDs, leading the Bengals all the way to the Super Bowl, where they eventually play a team and specifically lose to a QB in Joe Montana, who we'll be getting to later. Lastly, we have Rich Gannon in 2002. The man was practically 40 years old still doing it. Pre-snap doctorate, empty sets, choice routes, option trees, he conducted it all. He threw with anticipation to grass, not just to receivers, and punished zone with his eyes and feet. Yes, he had 2 Hall of Famers in Tim Brown and Jerry Rice he was throwing to, but they looked so good in part because of Gannon. He threw for a league-leading 418 completions and 4,600 yards, all while leading them to the Super Bowl. They would ultimately lose that game, but that seemed more like Bill Callahan's fault than anything else. It wasn't the flashiest MVP, but it was the cleanest operation on the field that season. Level 3 checked every box. Level 4 breaks out of that box and starts stressing coordinators on Tuesdays.
Level 4, great season.
Level 4 adds strain to coordinators. These seasons didn't just check boxes, they bent game plans and carried real playoff gravity. Starting with Sean Alexander's 2005 season. He was the definition of an offensive force. Behind a dominant O-line, he stacked touchdowns, controlled tempo, and gave his quarterback 2nd and 5 all day. His patience, one-cut bursts, and a nose for the goal line that led to a league-leading 1,880 yards and 27 touchdowns? Was it system-aided? Sure, but he was the right back in the right system, and he punished lighter boxes created by play action. He would be the primary offensive player, leading the Seahawks to a Super Bowl where they would ultimately lose to the Steelers. Speaking of Super Bowl losses, we also have Matt Ryan's 2016 MVP season. This wasn't volume for volume's sake, it was precision. He operated a balanced attack that punished every coverage rule you'll teach. He hit it all in rhythm. The eye test shows anticipation throwing to voids, not just to open men. Red zone, top 10, total yards, 2nd, points scored, 1st in the league, all with no hero ball. You prepare to take away one thing, he beat you with the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th answer. He lifted the baseline and the ceiling. Up until the Super Bowl. We gotta bring up Marcus Allen in 1985. Allen blended patience, vision, and finish. You saw the jump cut, the stiff arm, and the acceleration to daylight. But the deeper value lived in down and distance control. First down success rates climbed because he would consistently turn potential negatives into 3 or 4 yards. He'd finish with the league-leading 1,759 rushing yards and over 2,300 total scrimmage yards, leading the Raiders to a 12-4 record and 1st in the AFC West. Do y'all remember Joe Theismann? Washington lived on protection discipline and route structure, and Theismann made it hum. He threw receivers open to immediate digs, got the ball out against pressure looks, and used cadence to steal reveals from safeties. He threw for over 3,714 passing yards and 29 TDs, all leading to an ultimate Super Bowl loss against the Raiders during his 1983 MVP campaign. Someone perfect in Super Bowls was Emmitt Smith, and that didn't change in 1993. Coming off his first Super Bowl win, Emmitt was on another level. His vision and balance moved piles, but the value was bigger than yards. He stabilized scripts, kept the defense fresh, and made every 2nd and 4 seem like they would get the first down if they handed it off to him. He ran the Cowboys to 2nd in points scored, 4th in total yards, and another Super Bowl win on the back of 1,486 rushing yards. He made the most important downs look routine, and routine wins titles. Speaking of routine title wins, we have Joe Montana's 1989 campaign, finishing with 3,521 passing yards and a league-leading 112.4 passer rating, leading the 49ers all the way to dog-walking the Broncos in the Super Bowl. He read levers like a chess master. Every concept had a built-in outlet, and he'd hit it without ego. That sounds simple? It's not. It cripples a pass rush. Safeties sit flat-footed because the ball is out, and then he takes a calculated deep shot when you finally creep. He was the GOAT before the GOAT, for a reason. Now, level 5 raises the bar from great to special. We're talking about seismic impact and outlier peak seasons that force rulebooks to bend.
Level 5, special season.
Level 5 is where dominance meets difficulty. We've mentioned him a few times earlier, but we finally get to talk about Earl Campbell in 1979. Every time I see his highlights, I just smile. Power with purpose. He ran into 8-man boxes and still moved the chains. The thing is, in that era, you didn't have spacing gifts or light nickel boxes to look on early downs. You had neck roll linebackers and 2 gap liners. He finished with 1,697 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns, winning MVP and also Offensive Player of the Year. Super value was tone setting. Teams adjusted their entire week to survive him. That's a rare breed. Another rare player is Walter Peyton, Sweetness in 1977. There's a reason backs call him the standard. He created yardage that wasn't blocked, outside zones into stiff fronts, cutbacks through a crease that wasn't really there, and finished with violent balance. He'd finished with the league-leading 1,852 yards with 14 touchdowns and winning MVP along with Offensive Player of the Year, without a modern spread or even consistent passing threat to lighten the box. If you look at situational football, he was the answer key. A player not from this world was Adrian Peterson in 2012. Coming off a torn ACL, nobody really thought he'd be able to come back and be as dominant as quickly. But we were all wrong. He ripped explosives out of base runs like they were screens. He did it when defenses sold out. No motion sleight of hand, no college concepts, just downhill violence. The eye test screams every carry felt like a threat to flip the scoreboard. He pulled safeties down, which gave his offense air it wouldn't have had otherwise. He finished with over 2,000 yards, finishing just 9 yards short of the single-season record set by Eric Dickerson. And Dickerson didn't win MVP that season only because of a Miami quarterback we'll be getting to soon. But back to Peterson, he would wind up dragging the Vikings to a 10-6 record and as of now be the last non-quarterback to win the MVP award. Lawrence Taylor in 1986 won pretty much everything. He changed the math on offense. Protection slides, tight end chips, backs in for help, all started with 56. He didn't just sack quarterbacks, he forced quick throws, bad reads, and offensive coordinators to call scared. He recorded 20.5 sacks and be the reason the Giants made it all the way to the Super Bowl and blew out the Broncos for the win. In a league that rarely even considers defense for MVP, he made it obvious by playing at a level where every snap was a threat. One of the few trailblazers for LT was Alan Page. His 1971 interior dominance was insane. Page would beat double teams with ease. He won with get-off, hands, and a motor that ran hot for 60 minutes. Interior pressure is the shortest path to create chaos, and Page would do that almost weekly. He would end with 7 sacks and lead the league with 2 safeties, hurried balls, drawn holes, and game plans shaded from the A-gaps. Defensive MVPs live here because their value broke through the standard of QB bias. Steve Young in 1994 changed the game. He perfected efficiency. He married the West Coast quick game to elite movement and deep shot accuracy. Defenses tried to take away his first read, he punished him with his legs. Then he hit the dagger after the scramble drill forced coverage bust. Red zone, he was surgical. Third down, he was elite. You sit and spy him, watch him layer a corner route into a tight window. It's not just about the stats, it's the way he removed negative plays while hunting explosives. But the stats were impressive. 3,969 passing yards and a league-leading 35 touchdowns with 112.8 passer rating. Finally getting over the hump and blowing out the Chargers in the Super Bowl. Special season MVPs don't just beat you. They change how you feel by halftime. You're tired earlier. You're late to your gaps. Your third down menu shrinks because first and second down got bullied. They put the league on their own terms. Level 6 MVPs had slightly better seasons.
Level 6, era-defining season.
These MVPs didn't ride trends, they set them, starting with Cam Newton in 2015. Before Lamar Jackson, who we'll get to next, Cam gave us power, QB as a short yardage hammer. The red zone became a cheat code because the numbers favored Carolina 11 versus 11. Edge defenders had no gap to steal because Cam carried the ball like a back and he threw like a striker. He forced defensive coordinators to assign a spy who couldn't tackle him, then punished single coverage outside with moonballs. The eye test shows avalanche drives, designed QB runs on early downs, play action daggers on third. Cam socialized the idea that your quarterback could be your best goal line back, finishing with 45 total touchdowns, passing for 3,837 passing yards, and dragging that awful wide receiving core to the Super Bowl. Speaking of awful receiving cores, the same would go for Lamar Jackson in 2019. The dual threat revolution became a finished product. This wasn't just scrambling, it was designed leverage. Defense in conflict on every snap. Safeties stuck between run fit and post help. Linebackers frozen by option mesh. He hit seams, he punished rotations, and he lived in second and short. He would lead the Ravens to first in team rushing yards, first in passing touchdowns, and also set the NFL single season rushing record with 1,206 yards. Lamar didn't just win, he reset what mobile meant. He made speed a scheme, not a trait. And then they played the Titans. We also got to mention the golden boy Patrick Mahomes for 2018 and 2022. 2 templates from one player. In 2018, it was arm talent plus aggression, deep shots from any platform, full field reads married to motion and misdirection. He weaponized off-schedule plays as a feature, not a bailout. Defenses tried to heat him up. He beat pressure with angles and velocity, including the best Monday Night Football game of all time, culminating with over 5,000 passing yards and 50 touchdowns in his first year starting. Then 2022 flipped the script. Patience, light boxes punished, quick game mastered, high shells forced boring football. He turned boring into a machine. He'd also throw for another 5,000 yards, but this time he was able to get the job done and dominate on his way to another Super Bowl win. One player authored 2 answers to 2 different defensive eras. That's era-defining squared. One of the best seasons of all time was Marshall Faulk in 2000, the modern space back. He wasn't a check down, he was the first read. Motion to the slot, angle routes at full speed, option routes against leverage. The Rams turned the backfield into a third receiving position, and Faulk's vision made every draw and screen a vertical threat. He'd finished with over 2,100 scrimmage yards and a league-leading 18 touchdowns. The league learned that yards from scrimmage are a better tell for impact than raw carries. You can see the echoes in how coordinators feature multi-purpose backs now. Faulk taught the formula. But the player who set up Marshall Faulk was actually Barry Sanders in 1997. Everyone remembers the highlight runs. He broke the loaded box equals stalemate rule. Without spread spacing, Barry still turned base looks into explosives. It taught offenses to live with negative plays because the next snap could be a home run. He'd finished with 2,053 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns, winning the MVP and also Offensive Player of the Year. Barry normalized crazy plays and made coordinators tolerate volatility for upside. Someone who was a bit of a flash in the pan, but the flash was more like an atomic bomb, was Terrell Davis, especially his 1998 season. Zone run textbook, stretch, cut, punish. The edge threat pulled backers horizontally. The cutback hit them vertically. Add play action and safeties froze. Davis turned an offensive line philosophy into a league-wide adoption. He'd also run for a league-leading 2,008 yards and 21 touchdowns, rushing the Broncos all the way to back-to-back Super Bowl wins. The person who set the foundation for almost everything is Jim Brown. Power, speed, and ruthless efficiency in a league built for collisions. Defenses stacked fronts and it didn't matter. Brown set the standard for building a franchise identity around one player and made volume with efficiency a viable path to championships. In 1958, he ran for 1,527 yards and 17 touchdowns. Era-defining is almost the apex of influence. And now we've only got one level left, where it wasn't just influence, it was statistical immortality. The tape, the numbers, the fear factor, the best.
Level 7, the best.
This level is MVP immortality. Seasons that don't just win awards, they redefine what best looks like at full speed. Starting with Dan Marino. We had mentioned him a little earlier, but we gotta go over Dan. Dan Marino in 1984 was the blueprint. He's your favorite quarterback's favorite quarterback for a reason. He'd throw for a record 5,084 passing yards and 48 touchdowns, which held his records for decades. Era adjusted, this is volcanic. In a league that allowed hands-on receivers and lived in heavier personnel, he launched a vertical passing clinic from a static pocket. Release, velocity, anticipation, he toggled all three. He didn't need rollout gimmicks or spacing candy. He ripped tight windows that most quarterbacks won't even see. If you value raw passing difficulty, Marino's season can easily sit at the top of the mountain. Someone who would end up breaking his record was Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's 2004 and 2013 seasons were insane. In 2004, he owned timing and leveraged pre-snap tells, under center play action, and ruthless red zone execution. He maximized every snap like a surgeon. He threw for over 4,500 yards and a record 49 touchdowns. Then 2013 turned it into a carnival of points, spread sets, option routes, hot answers, and shot plays layered off quick game rhythm. He would throw for over 5,400 yards and a record-setting 55 touchdowns. What separates Peyton here is control. He didn't rely on chaos, he erased it, and defensive coordinators lost their second punch by halftime. Unless they were the Legion of Boom. We kinda knocked him before, but Brett Favre in 1995 not only deserved the MVP, but was clearly the best player in the league. He was the definition of controlled aggression. He'd throw for a league-leading 4,413 yards and 38 touchdowns. The thing is, he weaponized a second reaction within the structure. Boot, reset the platform, still on time. Gunslinger energy with disciplined answers drove a weekly stress test no one could pass. Speaking of driving and stress, we have O.J. Simpson. The Juice's 1973 season was more than just historic. He was inevitable. In an era of stacked boxes and smaller playbooks, he turned base runs into explosives with angle-busting speed and balance. He forced 8 in the box, then made the 8th miss. That's gravitational pull you usually see from elite passing games. He'd rush for over 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in just 14 games. Another record-setting running back was LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006. The modern running back template on max volume. Goal line finisher, screen assassin, angle route problem. He didn't just pile touchdowns, he created short fields by converting thirds and protected the quarterback with blitz pickups. He'd rush for over 1,800 yards and 28 touchdowns in a record 31 total touchdown season. He had it all. Kurt Warner's 1999 season actually makes no sense. He took full field concepts and hit them like 7-on-7, except it was Sunday. He went from bagging groceries to being the NFL MVP all within a few years. Play action daggers, rhythm seams, and yak manufacturing because the ball was on time every time. He threw for over 4,300 yards and 41 touchdowns all the way to a Super Bowl win and being known as the greatest show on turf. He completely broke the NFL. That can also be said for Aaron Rodgers in 2011 and in 2020. In 2011, explosives with near zero risk, basically all turnovers erased by decision speed and ridiculous ball placement. Rodgers would throw for 4,643 yards and 45 touchdowns, having just 6 interceptions with an insane 122.4 passer rating. And in 2020, surgical answers to 2 high shells, patient, boring when needed, deadly when a window cracked. He threw for 4,299 yards with 48 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. With the Packers again being the 1 seed and him having a passer rating above 121, he just couldn't get it done in the playoffs. And the same would go with the GOAT. He had the best MVP season ever, that being Tom Brady in 2007. Precision at scale, he married vertical aggression with ball security, and the operation rarely blinked. He threw for over 4,800 yards and a record-setting 50 touchdowns at the time, going 16-0 in the regular season, but would ultimately end up losing to Eli Manning. He didn't just throw to stars, though they obviously had Randy Moss. He made stars, including Wes Welker. That's how you build an offense that scores on command without living in risk. That's the gold standard. And so there you have it, the 7 levels of NFL MVPs. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.